and welcome to Kindful Living. My name is Zara, and today we are talking all about toddler tantrums, what they are, why and when they happen, as well as what adults can do to kindfully support toddlers to navigate these challenges so that toddlers can learn how to manage their reactions, as well as learn the skills required to eventually self-regulate. It is my hope by the end of the video that you will feel more confident to prevent tantrums when they can be prevented, as well as to respond to your toddlers once they have already begun to demonstrate tantrum behaviors so that you can de-escalate them and help reduce the duration, frequency, and intensity of their tantrums. Before we begin, I just want to share that in my 10+ years of working with children and families, both as a social worker as well as a child and family therapist, I witnessed my fair share of toddler tantrums. But it wasn't until I witnessed a tantrum as a mother when my son was 17 months old that I truly understood how helpless a parent or caregiver feels when their child is inconsolable and nothing you say or do can help them to calm down. So this video is not just a presentation of information from a professional point of view, but it's also information that I'm sharing from my personal experiences as a mother. I also want to add that while working in children's mental health, parents would sometimes come to me and request my support in helping their toddlers to learn how to de-escalate themselves or to stop having tantrums. And needless to say, they were not too impressed with me and sometimes even got upset when I would respond to their request by stating that not only were tantrums a healthy and normal part of development, but that they weren't going away anytime soon. Finding a way to limit tantrums requires patience and lots of it. It takes time for children to develop that part of the brain, the frontal lobe, which is responsible for using logic and for problem solving as well as for self-regulating. Furthermore, it would take even more patience for them to learn the skills to be able to self-regulate. And even more so, it would require loving, caring adults that were willing to go the extra mile so that they could learn about their children and their triggers in order to prevent tantrums that can be prevented, as well as to support their children in a way, once they're engaged in a tantrum, to respond in a manner that makes calming down and de-escalating an option. So what I'm trying to say is that the best success in handling tantrums comes when parents and children, as well as caregivers for the children, work together consistently so that they can find out how to best respond to a child in those moments so the child can feel like there is someone that is understanding what they are going through and is there to help them. I found that in my own journey of kindfulness that incorporating values of compassion as well as mindfulness significantly impacted how toddlers, especially my own, responded to intervention during tantrums. And that using compassion and mindfulness is really the best strategy for helping children to feel seen, heard, and soothed. On a final note, in my work in children's mental health, although the majority of my work was with the parents, I infrequently worked with children over the age of 4 when tantrums were not reducing and were significantly impacting their day-to-day routines. The majority of my work with children centered around teaching them about their brain and how it worked. And I almost felt like a light bulb went off for most of them when they learned and understood that they were in charge of their brains so that they could actually control how they felt and how they reacted to situations. Once they understood this, they were empowered to take control of their reactions, and no matter what life threw their way, they were very committed to responding in a way that made them feel proud of themselves. So I do plan on creating a future video to share some tips and tricks on how parents and caregivers, as well as perhaps educators, can teach toddlers and preschoolers about their brain and how it works. But for now, let's get to talking about tantrums. So, what exactly are tantrums? Tantrums are a normal and healthy part of child development. This is the way that young children show us that they're upset or frustrated when they simply just don't have the words to tell us. Tantrums usually happen when children are tired, hungry, or uncomfortable. In short, when a child can't express what they need to through words, they show us with their actions. Because toddlers love to control their environment, as well as believe that they can do anything that they put their mind to, tantrums are also often the result of toddlers realizing that they can't control everything and everybody, and that they're just not capable of doing everything that they would like to believe that they are. When something happens that upsets us, This activates our limbic system, and our limbic system is intended to keep us safe from threats and danger. So it operates purely on impulses as well as emotion. There is no reasoning or logic in the limbic system. When a toddler gets upset, their limbic system is activated, but to make things worse for them, they don't have a developed frontal lobe. So the part of the brain that uses logic and that can problem solve is not available to toddlers, which is why when toddlers are in the midst of a tantrum, they are literally hijacked by their emotions. This is why adult support is crucial in helping toddlers to regulate their emotions during a tantrum. So why exactly do toddlers have tantrums? As I just mentioned, the part of the brain that's responsible for problem solving as well as thinking logically, the frontal lobe, does not begin to develop until we're about 2 years old and does not finish developing until we're in our mid-20s. So when toddlers and young children are upset, their limbic system is activated and there is no check or balance to help this part of the brain to regulate because it simply isn't developed enough to help them understand why they're upset, let alone what they can do about it. So when do tantrums begin and when do they end? We've all heard of the term terrible twos, and this term simply refers to the fact that tantrums usually begin around age 2 because this is when language starts to develop for most children. Unfortunately, it is not adequate enough to help them express everything that they are feeling and experiencing. So when language is not sufficient to help a toddler or a young person convey what they are experiencing, they usually demonstrate this through a tantrum. Tantrums usually end when language skills begin to improve. However, this is not always the case. We all know young adults as well as fully grown adults who still engage in tantrum behavior. And that's because in order for tantrums to stop, an individual needs to be able to self-regulate. And self-regulation requires a whole other subset of skills, such as the ability to be self-aware, the ability to be motivated to act in socially acceptable ways, having the social skills to behave and respond to crises and overwhelming situations in a responsible and socially acceptable way, as well as empathy for others' feelings. So now that we know what's going on in the brain of our toddlers when they're having tantrums, what can we do to help them? If there is any message in this video that I want to underscore, it's that an ounce of prevention is worth 2 pounds of the cure when it comes to tantrums. What I mean when I say that is, if it's possible at all to prevent a tantrum because you see that your child is getting tired and might just benefit from a nap, or is getting hungry and might need a snack, then it's best to find a way to minimize their frustrations and prevent as much of that tantrum as possible. It takes a lot more resources and time and energy to be able to de-escalate a child once they're engaged in a tantrum rather than to prevent a tantrum. Here are some tips for preventing tantrums in toddlers. One of the main ways that we can prevent tantrums in toddlers is by giving our toddlers plenty of positive attention. Many of us are quick to call our kids out on their negative behaviors, but we aren't mindful enough to notice and praise their positive efforts and outcomes. It is so important that we get in the habit of catching our children being good. If we give them attention for positive things, it is more likely that we will see more of these positive behaviors in the future. It's just as important that we shower them with empathy and compassion when life doesn't go the way they planned, rather than denying them a chance to feel what they are feeling. Even when their responses seem to be disproportionate to what has occurred, it is important for us to let them feel what they are feeling and to move through it. What seems little to us may feel huge to them. Kindful parenting is about being present in whatever moment our little ones are experiencing and rewarding them with praise and attention for positive behavior so that we are reinforcing it. This way, they don't need to act out in negative ways to gain our attention because for young children, any attention from their preferred adults is considered positive attention. Try giving toddlers some control over decisions that impact their life and which they can handle. By being mindful of a toddler's need for independence and control, and offering them opportunities to make choices that they can handle, such as, do you want a banana or an apple? Or do you want to wear your dinosaur sweater or your fire truck sweater? They are given the chance to take charge over their lives, which can help them to avoid looking for control over decisions and situations that are not age appropriate. Just remember to limit their options to realistic outcomes. Also, avoid asking yes or no questions such as, do you want to get dressed now, which we can predict will be inevitably answered with a no. To avoid unnecessary power struggles, it's a good habit to keep items that are off limits for our toddlers out of sight and therefore out of their mind. This makes struggles less likely. Although we obviously can't control every environment that our children spend time in, it's important to ensure that our home and other environments that they frequent are safe, predictable, and ready for them to explore. When toddlers get their hands on something they can't or shouldn't have, or engage in behaviors that are dangerous, inappropriate, or overly frustrating for them, take advantage of a toddler's short attention span by offering them something else in place of what they can't have, or start a new activity to replace the overly frustrating or forbidden one. It also helps to change the environment they're in. Take a toddler outside for fresh air, or simply change the room that they're in. Humor also works amazingly well for most toddlers. We can all benefit from being more mindful and considerate of our toddlers' need to be more involved and to feel helpful and accomplished. Helping kids to learn new things and praising them for their help and efforts helps them feel proud of what they can do and encourages more positive behaviors, as well as likely limits their need to do things that they aren't supposed to do in an attempt to look for attention from their preferred adults. Kindfully consider requests made by your toddler. At first glance, some requests made by toddlers might seem outrageous, but take a minute to consider them from the point of view of your toddler, and maybe it won't seem so absurd after all. We need to choose our battles carefully. My son went through a short period when he refused to eat whatever we gave him. In fact, he said no to almost everything we proposed. He would constantly ask us for bananas during mealtimes. We endured some unnecessary power struggles, to say the least, and in retrospect, I wish we had avoided them by letting him eat bananas because at least he was willing to eat something healthy rather than refusing to eat anything at all. I can't stress enough how important it is to know your child's limits and to respect them. If you know your toddler is tired, it's not the best time to go grocery shopping or to squeeze one more errand in unless you're willing to put up with a tantrum in the middle of the store. Make sure your child is getting enough sleep. With too little sleep, kids can become hyper, disagreeable, and have extreme behavior. Getting enough sleep can dramatically reduce tantrums. Find out how much sleep is recommended for your child based on their age. Although children are different, there is a range which is recommended, and it's usually best to ensure that the amount of sleep that your child is getting is somewhere in this range. In the case of my toddler, we cut his naps from 2 to 1 before he was actually ready based on his age, as well as because this is what other parents seem to be doing. However, we noticed that there was a huge rise in irritability and negative behaviors. So what we did was put the second nap back in on days where he seemed to need it, and we almost instantly saw a change in his behavior, as well as the number of tantrums that he was engaging in. Additionally, my family moved to a different home in a different community earlier this year, and it was around the same time that my toddler's baby brother entered our lives. So what happened is that we expected him to behave as he had before these huge changes in his life. However, he was clearly not capable of living up to the expectations that we had set for him before all these changes occurred in his life. It wasn't until we took a step back to consider what was going on for him from his point of view that we decided that we needed to ease up on him, and this made a huge difference in his ability to maintain his calm and to handle the challenges that life was throwing his way. Once your child is in the midst of a tantrum, it will inevitably take more time and patience to help them to de-escalate. However, these are some tips that can help you. Just remember that every child is different, and what works for one child might not work for another child. And even what works one day for one child might not work the next day. One of the quickest and most effective ways to stop a tantrum once it has begun is to connect with our children and to meet them in their limbic system. A statement that I often offer to families to help them remember this is connect to correct. Connecting with their emotions first is important so that they understand that we know where they are coming from. And then and only then can we talk to them about the problem and solving it. Otherwise, tantrums might get worse, or they might start again after they have apparently stopped because they never really were dealt with in the first place. Leveraging our relationship with our children helps to engage our children. When our children's brains are flooded with emotions, we can't speak logically to them and to expect logical answers. We've all probably tried saying things like, "Why are you crying?" or "Use your words and talk to me." If you've asked questions like this or made statements similar to this, you probably know that they don't work to help stop tantrums, and you likely didn't even get a response. That's because when we make statements like this, we are talking to the logical part of our kids' brains, but this part of the brain is not yet developed, nor is it available. Our children are not functioning in the logical part of their brain during a temper tantrum. They can't answer our questions because they are too emotionally hijacked to think logically. Therefore, the best and easiest way to stop a tantrum is to connect with their emotional brain and to meet them where they are, because that's where their brain is currently engaged. In order to do this, take a look at the situation and your child and try to figure out what they're feeling and reflect that back to them. You can make statements like, "Wow, you're so angry," or "That really hurt your feelings, didn't it?" Statements like this let your child know that you're paying attention to them and that you can see what they are feeling. You are basically talking to them in a way that they can actually hear you. Most times, children respond to these statements, and this is the easiest way, like I said, to engage them, because then you're able to discuss with them what happened and how you can fix the problem at hand. Giving a hug or touching your child can also help them to know that you are there for them and that you are paying attention. However, not all children like to be touched when they're upset, just like all adults don't like to be touched when they're upset. So get their attention in whatever way you can and connect with them to show them that you are there for them. And once you are able to engage them, you can ask questions and deal with the problem at hand. There will likely be times, despite our best efforts, when toddlers are inconsolable regardless of what we say or what we do, because they're so upset they've literally, to use a term that's coined by Dr. Daniel Siegel, flipped their lid. In these instances, I find it helpful to sit quietly with my son and to just wait it out. My son sometimes sits in my lap and just takes his time to go through the motions and feel what he is feeling before he calms down. I initiate touch, such as gently stroking his back, and I try to see how he responds to it. If he seems receptive, I'll usually offer a hug or let him know that I'm there for him when he's ready to hug or to talk. Many times, he just sits in my lap until he has calmed down, although there are times where he does not want me to touch him at all. Yet, he seems to always prefer that I remain in close proximity to him. And I know this because when I move away to do something, while still remaining in the same room, he follows me. I reiterate the message to him that I'm there for him and that I'm there whenever he's ready to talk. It's very important that we avoid sending toddlers to another room to be alone when they're upset, because it sends the message to them that the way that they're feeling is unacceptable or unwelcome, and that we are abandoning them when they need us the most. This could encourage them to hide their feelings from us in the future for fear that it pushed us away in the past. I usually tell parents that it is okay to occasionally send school-age children to their room to calm down when they're upset, but only if you feel that you might benefit from some distance and space, as well as time, so that you can calm down yourself and then re-engage with them in a loving, patient manner. But it should never be used as punishment or isolation. It's important to send the message to their children that they are allowed to re-engage with us as soon as they're calm, so that when they are in control, they're being rewarded for managing their reactions to difficult situations. One of the most important points that I want to make in this video is that kindful parenting is a lot about being self-aware. It is critical that we notice our reactions in these moments when our toddlers are having tantrums. The calmer that we are, the calmer our children will be. So it's important that we keep our cool when responding to our toddlers, especially when they're engaged in a tantrum. It's unnecessary and not helpful to complicate the problem with our own frustration or anger. As parents and caregivers, it is our responsibility to help our children learn how to calm down in acceptable ways, which means we need to model healthy habits, such as remaining as calm as possible. Some tips include lowering your voice and whispering. Loud voice can further aggravate a toddler who's in the midst of a tantrum. Toddlers don't need someone to join them in their tantrum, but to support them and be there for them, to role model and to teach them how to navigate difficult emotions and situations. It also helps to get down to their level and to be face to face with them so that we can connect with them and be less intimidating. Also, it makes it easier for them to physically see us and to be seen by us, which is important so that they can feel that we understand what they're going through and that we're there to help them. Toddlers often also like looking at our face to make sure that we're not upset with them or the situation, because they need to know that how they're feeling is acceptable and okay. One of my mentors once reminded me during a session that I had to reflect on work that I was doing with a particular family that was experiencing a lot of challenges with their toddler and toddler tantrums, that it is so crucial to keep in perspective that when our children are engaged in tantrums, they are having a rough time and that they're not trying to give us a rough time. Even when things that seem so small to us occur in their life and cause them to get all worked up, they are truly doing the best that they can, like all of us are, to deal with those overwhelming emotions and experiences in their life. They simply don't have the skills that we have. So what seems inconsequential to us might not be inconsequential to them at all. It's really important for us to maintain our cool and to respond to them in a loving, kind, compassionate manner. After your child seems to have calmed down and is ready to re-engage with you, it's important to remember that our children are most vulnerable after these tantrums, when they know that they've been less than adorable. Now is the time for a hug as well as reassurance that our children are still loved no matter what. In debriefing with them, it's important to figure out what caused the tantrum together. This way we can help to teach them appropriate alternative ways to respond the next time they are feeling upset. As I had mentioned earlier, if we are able to learn about what caused their tantrums, then we can use this information to help prevent them in the future. For example, if we know that our child was hungry half an hour before dinner time, and this happens occasionally, then we just might want to give them a snack before dinner. But if we keep noticing that they are getting upset and frustrated and that this is causing tantrums before dinner every single day, then we might want to change their dinner time to an earlier time. Try to always keep in mind that our children learn the most when they are watching us. So role modeling is key, and talking about our own feelings during these difficult moments is important for them to learn how to develop empathy, as well as to learn how to take charge and be responsible for their own behaviors. Before we wrap up, I just want to share a book that I found to be an immensely beneficial resource, both as a clinician as well as a parent. It is called The Whole Brain Child, and it's written by Dr. Daniel Siegel. Dr. Siegel actually writes lots of books about how the child brain works and how parents can use this knowledge to work with their children in ways that are going to contribute to their positive and healthy development. I would totally suggest any parent that has a library or a bookstore nearby, or even to use an online resource, to check this book out. It really is great. It has lots of diagrams and lots of charts that make it really easy to understand how the brain does work and how to relay this information to our children. Again, like I said, keep tuned. I'm planning to do a video on how we can explain to children, younger children, toddlers and preschoolers, how their brain works so that they feel more in control of how they behave and how they respond to situations in the near future. As for now, this video is complete. I hope you enjoyed it. If you found it to be helpful, please give it a thumbs up and share. As well, please comment down below if you have any other strategies that I haven't included, because I'm thinking I might want to do a follow-up video to this as my son gets older. So if you have any tips and tricks for how to deal with tantrums as toddlers age, my son is right now 20 months, but I'm thinking that a lot of these strategies, such as humor, might not work for so long once he knows we're using them. If you have any suggestions, please share them down below so that myself and other parents can benefit from other parents' knowledge and experience that have older kids. And if you are interested in future content and videos like this one, please press the subscribe button. For now, that's it, and I hope you all enjoyed. Take care and have a wonderful day.